Self-control. Do you eat too much pizza? Drink too much? Are you smoking?
Change comes from within. You can't have other people wanting you to change.
Hulk versus Bruce Banner.
Separating your thoughts from your actions.
This is actually a major way of helping you with self-control, right?
Use Facebook to not lose face.
It's actually impacting relationships, it's impacting love, it's impacting expectation.
And that fake it till you make it maxim is a brilliant one. It's relevant and it's a justified technique.
Welcome to Budge, how to fudge being human, behavioural science, psychology and nudge theory, and how to help you become okay at being human. Self-control. Do you eat too much pizza? Do you drink too much? Are you smoking? Not that sort of self-control, although it could be. Today we're going to be talking all about self-control, but before we do, make sure you go on YouTube and subscribe, and also find us now on TikTok, as well as Facebook, LinkedIn, and all the best podcasts, Apple and Spotify particularly. So if you could like, share, or comment, we would really appreciate it. So self-control. What are you struggling to control? We've got the man here today to tell us and talk us through 3 ways to help you maintain your self-control. Dr. Darren Coppin, behavioural scientist, writer, speaker, lover, and of course the inspiration behind Shaggy's It Wasn't Me.
Good to see you, Paul. It's a lovely sunny day in Queensland. And Paul Miles, of course, you're managing director of the Busy Group, one of the country's largest education, training and employment agencies, and player of the Pink Piccolo.
I don't even know what that means.
Good.
And we're also joined by Ellie and Christy, our fabulous production team, who will butt in to make sense of this podcast. Let's jump straight into the world's most famous psychological experiment of self-control, shall we?
All right. So
I believe this was 1972.
No, actually it was 1968.
Was it really?
Yeah, the first one.
You misinformed me. Really. So basically, there's a very famous experiment around self-control, yeah, where you take some children and you put a marshmallow in front of them, and you say to them, right, if you can not eat that marshmallow whilst I leave the room for 15 minutes, in 15 minutes you get 2 marshmallows. Now, I was that fat kid. I would have eaten those marshmallows and probably hunted around the room for the one that they promised me in 15 minutes. But this isn't actually the case. A lot of people actually have far better self-control than I do.
Yeah, well, back then only 5% of kids, 15 minutes is a long time, but only 5% of children could indeed wait that long.
Yep.
And of course children today have a lot less self-control, they have a lot more stuff on demand. But that's not actually the case.
Yes, I was about to interrupt you rudely then. I thought we, the common thing is that we're more entitled. We get what we want when we want. We're on this with this on-demand sort of society. So I thought, before we started preparing for this podcast, that kids today had even less self-control than 50 years ago. But that's not the case.
Yeah, it's actually doubled the number of children who can resist.
Yep.
From about 5% back in 68, 72, the first experiments.
So these are kids, they get the marshmallow, mum or dad leaves the room for 15 minutes. Now we're saying 10% of kids, they're able to not... So does that mean 90% of kids eat the marshmallow?
Yeah.
Wow, okay.
And then that's quite reflective of human society as a whole in terms of issues of self-control or self-regulation. There's something called the VIA Character Strengths Survey and Virtues Survey that works out what are your top strengths or the order of your strengths, not just in terms of comparing you to yourself, but there's been 21 million people in every country on earth have undertaken this strengths survey.
They've never asked me.
And I think the top one is something like kindness, and then honesty and
so
fairness.
The top strength is kindness.
Yeah, okay. It's wonderful. The bottom one is self-regulation.
So as humans, across 21 million people across a whole range of cultures, demographics, our worst human characteristic is our self-control.
Yeah, at least strong strength.
At least strong strength.
Is not self-control but self-regulation.
Right, okay.
Which is subtly different, but more or less a proxy for each other. Self-control means you can say no.
Yep.
You say no, but self-regulation is controlling or regulating the conditions to try and reduce temptation, if you like, or how you respond. So there's such a difference, but yeah, we're terrible at self-control is the bottom line. But we're getting better at it, it would suggest, with a marshmallow test. But then again, there's been some books by Shafir and other studies that suggest that it's, in the late 60s, a marshmallow was a bit of a treat, whereas now you don't care much for a marshmallow.
Because we can have, most kids could just whinge to their parents to get as many marshmallows as they want.
Yeah, exactly. And the studies in the book go further than that. That you're able to control yourself better if you're more affluent, generally. And it's not such a hand-to-mouth situation. And this kind of points to the root of why we're pretty bad at self-control.
Yeah, because we are. I assume we are a lot more affluent than 50 years ago. And I know there's massive problems with poverty and so all that sort of thing, but data will tell us that we're far more affluent than we ever were. So that self-control isn't necessarily the fact that humans have got better at self-control. It's just, it's a marshmallow, I don't care.
Yeah, not so much, okay, I can... Yeah, marshmallows. I had one of these yesterday, or a sweet yesterday. Whereas in 1968, those kids in the United States, when the survey was done, might not have had a sweet or a lolly, as we call it in Australia, for months. And it's fascinating because really, what self-control is about is our basis, most basic human instincts. It's like a reptilian brain versus mammalian brain. Bruce Banner versus the Hulk. And it's now versus the future, and we are bred for most of human history and for most animals. If you see something in front of you, you grab it and you benefit from it, and that's why we've got all these phrases, like a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush, and make hay while the sun shines, and YOLO, you only live once, is do it now, and it is bred into us for survival.
So if it's bred into survival, then, as humans, can we actually create techniques, find ways to better regulate ourselves? Because we live in this culture now where we're all supposed to be super fit, we're all supposed to be super skinny, but we are fatter and less fit than ever before. So is there a way of actually, if you're saying it's such a key part of our evolution and it's actually ingrained into us so much, can we actually control it or not?
Yes, you can. Now, people don't fart in front of each other as much anymore.
As much anymore?
Yeah.
Was that a thing?
When I was a child, it was everywhere. There's no London smog. It wasn't pollution, but it's fact. But personal hygiene, things like that, you can control yourself. You can teach yourself to control. But it's mostly...
Why have we done that then? Is just societal expectations have changed?
Yes, social norms.
Right, okay.
It's massive, and that is one of our key drivers, and one of the two key things that we can harness to try and control ourselves a little bit more. I mean, what's weird is one of our biggest issues with self-control is smartphone addiction.
Yeah, look, it's a massive issue. I'm so addicted to my phone, you know that. I put it on Do Not Disturb for this podcast, and it's killing me.
Yeah. Your thumb's trying to swipe as we talk.
So I've got the beer just there, something to do.
Actually, that's funny because it's one of the things for smoking is the contemplative nature, but the having something to do to fiddle with your hands. So a smartphone, though, how can you say, well, I'm addicted to a smartphone because of my evolutionary DNA? Sort of yearnings for doing things.
I'm no scientist, but I'm going to guess that Neanderthals didn't have smartphones.
Well, there is no, and but what it is on smartphones that drives us are generally the things that always have driven us. What the most popular things on phones is receiving a text, a communication, or social media, because we're an incredibly social animal and we do genuinely get dopamine rushes or whatever from the ding of a text, and what have you. So it's our inquisitive, it's our competitive, it's our human nature that compels us to keep wanting to stare and interact with a phone. So that's why we need to sort of control ourselves with phones. Is our basest, most ancient human behaviours drive us to want to look at it.
Now, ancient human behaviours, that reminds me, James Waite, Jim, we have a sponsor for Budge now, Populite Solutions, populite.com.au, so I should mention them. They put together amazing programs for the employment services sector to help long-term unemployed people find jobs and to help employment service providers actually help their jobs get into job. Should we say anything else about Jim other than the fact he sponsors us?
Oh, he's lovely.
He is lovely, isn't he?
Lovely.
He's one of those he's very English, isn't he?
Yes.
Yeah, terribly English.
I hate the English.
You're English.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Self-loathing.
Welsh. You invaded us first. Anyway,
Liberation.
I'm getting over it. It's only been 700 years.
Liberation.
Right. So our ancient. So even things like smartphones now do point to our evolution, right? So the fact that we've evolved even to this point where we still have lack of self-control when it comes to even modern technology. What are the ways that we can get some control over our lack of self-control?
Yeah, there are a few things we can do. First of all, we can pre-plan and avoid. So from binge eating, I can make sure I've got no
Who are you pointing at?
food. I'll point to your fridge,
Okay.
who's called Jeffrey. So for binge eating,
Yeah.
you can make sure you haven't got naughty foods in there. Like what you've just done with your phone, you've switched it off. Everyone's smartphone now has times where you can switch off certain apps whenever you want to, but people rarely do it. But so there's that self-regulate pre-planning.
Okay, so step one to self-control, pre-planning.
Avoid the temptation.
Okay, so let's just so avoid the temptation. So that works really well with dieting, trying to lose weight. Because when it comes to self-control, I assume the biggest issues we have, most common ones people think about, is they don't exercise, they eat too much junk, and they probably spend too much money on crap they don't need in this, post-materialistic world, but still, we still spend a lot of money on things we don't need. So you could pre-plan by not having junk in the house, say around that, eating too much pie issue. What about spending too much?
How do you stop spending too much money?
Yeah, how can you pre-plan to not spend money?
it kind of self-regulates itself because you run out of money pretty quickly, so then you can't anymore. Then you have to turn to crime, like what you did.
Yeah, well, it worked out well for me, mate.
But there's another sort of the second of the three key, I guess, ways is self-control. One of the most effective ways of enhancing self-control is through social control, by putting yourself out there, by saying on Facebook you're going to be losing weight, or seeing yourself in a podcast and realising you're a bit fatter than you realise, and insisting that the cameras are 3 inches higher so you don't have
Who would do that?
I have no idea, but it does. So
I've heard this
social.
before. I literally, because to lose weight, one of the major things is actually to tell the world this is what you're going to do, right? It's accountability. So if you put on Facebook, hey guys, I'm about to start an 8-week challenge. I need to lose 5 kilos, and I'm going to tell you every week how much I've lost in the last week. At the end of the 8 weeks, I'm going to tell you how much I've lost. Yeah. This is actually a major way of helping you with self-control, right?
Yeah, exactly. Use Facebook to not lose face.
Yeah.
And self-control.
You're full of amazing puns,
social control leads to self-control.
Yeah.
So that's the second one. It's this external, making it available to everyone. But the third key one, after avoiding or social control and social embarrassment, I guess, is the exact opposite. It's totally in your mind. It's all about managing your urges and controlling yourself.
Yeah, that's really
internally.
easily said, isn't it? That if that was the answer to things, then we'd all be sort of super fit athletes. Yeah. And we'd be able to control all this stuff. I mean, how can you actually get your mind to that point?
Yeah, and it's the opposite of what you think. You think, right, willpower is what's going to control this, being strong, determined, and it never really works. It's willingness to recognise that you've got a craving for something, and separating your thoughts from your actions, and thinking, well, this isn't. I realise I'm thinking this, but I don't have to do it. And I think you had a friend that has this count to 5 technique.
No, not a friend. He's actually a well-known. Mal Robbins. She's a well-known.
Clearly, it wouldn't
speaker.
Be a friend.
No, because you're my only friend.
Okay.
But yeah, this technique of going 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 to break habits, but you could potentially apply it to self-control as well.
Yeah, exactly. It's part of acceptance and commitment therapy. Is you accept that you want something, but that doesn't mean that you have to do it. And just taking a little bit of time and maybe counting to 5 or saying to yourself, "Oh, I'm having the thought that I really want that cookie," means that you can actually, in that space, stop yourself wanting to have that cookie. And then you can feel a little dopamine rush from not having it because you succeeded.
That actually happens?
Yes.
Yeah. You and I first met around stages of change concepts. This is where you started to put together programs of stages of change to support job seekers, to stay and work. That, my understanding is the stage of change comes from Rhode Island smoking. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
do you remember that?
I remember stuff, mate. I remember
Wow.
stuff. Yeah. Does that stages of change model, which that is ultimately your major expertise, does the stages of change apply to self-control at all? Given that it is a model designed to help you identify your willingness to give up smoking.
No, I mean, yes, but the key with it is where we fool ourselves, though. So often you ask someone, do you really want to give up smoking? They go, yeah. Or do you really want to get a job, where we applied it? And people say, well, yes. But the reality isn't necessarily there. There are different levels of commitment to change. And once you know those different stages and which stage somebody's in, and there are 5, well, there's 6, which is maintenance, but and we discovered a middle one that's particularly prevalent in about a third of job seekers. I know it was me when I was unemployed, which is inauthentic or unauthentic action, which is people saying, I really want to do this, I really want to make this change, I really want to get a job or give up smoking, but actually they don't really. And you have to change the interventions you do with people so that they want to, and what I love about that thing is, change comes from within. You can't have other people wanting you to change. You've got to want to do it yourself, otherwise it never happens. So I suppose it's peripherally related to self-control.
Yeah, and I guess that's why I'm asking. Is if you take your 3 major things on how to help you self-control, which is pre-plan, it's putting it out there to the world, telling everyone, and this one about your internal control. Is with the stages of change concept, then is it, and if we apply that to not maybe smoking or to overeating or to over drinking, can we do we actually fool ourselves to thinking we want to change, and we actually don't?
Yes, but fooling yourself isn't necessarily a bad thing if you follow through, because you get into the habits and you get into the actions of actually making it a reality. And that fake it till you make it maxim is a brilliant one. It's relevant and it's a justified technique.
Yeah, mate, we're going to wrap up in a minute. If we apply this to the most obvious self-control things, which are addictions like smoking, or ultimately
porn.
You're back on OnlyFans. No, I mean, you're not back on it.
Thank you very much. OnlyFans.com,
Darren. It's a great channel, dazzesfeet.com or whatever it is. All right, so so are you saying then somebody, they pre-plan, so they delete OnlyFans from their phone, they tell the world, they go on Facebook and say, I'm not going to go on OnlyFans anymore.
Yeah.
And thirdly, they have to have some sort of control.
Yeah, and there is actually a website that that if you are addicted to porn, that hits all 3.
Okay.
That if you then go on, that you download onto your laptop, your smartphone, and what have you, if you go onto a porn site, it alerts your friends and family that you've identified.
Wow.
So it's that avoidance.
That's actually awesome.
And it's that social pressure.
Because it's actually become a major issue for relationships in modern day society. This has it's actually impacting relationships, it's impacting love, it's impacting expectations. So yeah, good luck with it.
And it alerts them if you delete that program as well. It's brilliant.
Oh, is that what that alert was?
Yeah.
Mate, thank you so much today. I'm just going to reiterate. So in terms of self-control as humans, despite it's the mammalian brain,
mammalian, yes,
close, against the reptilian, Hulk versus Bruce Banner, and the 3 ways to overcome this: effectively pre-planning, don't have the beer and the pie and the pasties in the fridge, delete your Uber Eats, tell the world, put your beer down, tell the world that you're out there trying to lose weight, you're not going to eat any more pizza. And number 3, there's a self-regulation part where you actually train your brain to teach yourself not to eat all that pizza out of the dustbin. Yeah, I heard about a guy actually that did that.
Terrible. It's not training your brain so much, it's having a willingness, not willpower. So recognising your thoughts are separate from your actions.
Okay.
And you're in control of them.
Thank you. Mate, thank you as always. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you everyone for watching. You can find us on all your finest social media channels: YouTube, Apple Podcast, Spotify. Give us a like, a share, most of all subscribe. Thanks for watching, and thanks to Populi Solutions, populi.com.au, our first and most awesome sponsor ever.